for sitting down with us. I just sort of want to talk a little bit about, first off, your upbringing.
Yeah.
Um, what was it like as a child growing up?
I mean, for me, it was just this, it was a normal, how do I say this? There were two parts of my upbringing. There was the part that most people would consider normal, you know, the playing video games, reading books, running around outside, hanging out with my siblings, going to school. And then aside from that, I would go out with my family to these protests from the age of 5. So before I started kindergarten, I was out protesting gays in a local park in Topeka, Kansas. I don't know how much you want me to go into it all.
I know, I was reading in here how
Yeah,
you would go to these protests.
and how people would treat us, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
What
gonna
was
say.
it like being on the side you were on, seeing how angry people would get?
Well, as my family explained it to me, people were angry because we were preaching the Word of God. And so for me, experiencing the wrath of outsiders, you know, people throwing things, driving their cars at us, yelling, you know, jumping out of their vehicles, you know, parking them in the middle of the road and just come after us on foot, you know, all of those things just were perfectly normal. In the very beginning, it was a little troublesome, but I was, you know, surrounded by family members who were doing this with me. And so we were the good guys, and the people coming after us were very clearly the bad guys. You know, they just reinforced the narrative that I was learning from my family, which was that they were evil, that they were hell-bound, and that we had a duty to go out and preach to them.
And has your view sort of evolved on that?
I would say yes. You know, growing up on the picket line, those, as I said, those things just become very normal. In hindsight, I understand why people responded the way they did. I still don't think it was right to commit crimes against, you know, members of my family. I understand that we were provoking a lot of that response. But I now see, you know, my family as I understand that they have good intentions, but I believe that a lot of what they do is harmful and destructive to so many other people. I no longer believe that the Bible is the infallible Word of God, that I can't question what I find written there. And so for my family, that was the controlling variable. Their understanding of the Bible was the only acceptable one. And I don't believe that anymore. And that's a huge part of what's led me sort of step outside Westboro's ideology and come to different conclusions about what it means to live a good life.
I was reading various articles, and I found that social media really played a big role in you changing some of your views.
Yeah.
Can you sort of talk about what it was about social media that
Yeah, absolutely.
pushed you?
Yeah, so I was never, at Westboro, I was never segregated from other people. I mean, not strictly speaking, right? I went to public school, I was exposed to outside ideas all the time. But what was special about social media was that it introduced me to people in a place where I felt safe. You know, whenever I was in physical space with other people, I knew it was an instinct to keep them at arm's length, to distrust them. And the distance that I had from other people on social media was a huge part, I think, of what allowed me to feel safe and to be vulnerable and open in ways that I never felt IRL, right, in real life. So that's part of it. It also allowed me to develop rapport with these people over time. So it wasn't like standing out on a picket line and only being around someone for 30 minutes, maybe a few hours at the very most. On social media, these conversations I was having with individuals were ongoing. So I was getting to see aspects of people and to experience it. I came to trust people in a way that I never had IRL. And so that was huge. And so all of the community aspect of it was really important. But I think also it allowed people to really understand the nuances of Westboro's ideology, and they were able to find inconsistencies, these internal contradictions. And coming from a family full of lawyers, for whom debate and argument and that was central to our ability to defend our beliefs from the Bible with good, sound arguments. was central to my understanding of what my duty in this life was. So to be, coming face to face with these people who did not behave, who treated me kindly and compassionately. They didn't behave the way that I understood that they should. I lost my train of thought. So they were able to find these internal inconsistencies, and those, that was the first thread that began to unravel the rest of my beliefs in Westboro's doctrine. It was the first thing that gave me any little bit of confidence in my own thinking, so that I could challenge Westboro's interpretation of the Bible, which I had never been willing to do before.
I'm just gonna look up a picture here real quick I took on my phone of
Sure.
David,
Abbott Ball. Yes.
Ball.
Yes.
So how did the two of you start talking?
So I joined Twitter in 2009. It was right before the Jewish high holidays, and David was one of the first people that I engaged on Twitter, that I targeted. My cousin sent me a list of the 100 most influential Jews on Twitter, and David was number 2 on that list. He ran a blog called Jewlicious. And so, initially his responses were what I expected. They were those extremely, negative, hostile, confrontational, aggressive responses. And again, given what I experienced growing up on the picket line, it was what I expected. But pretty quickly, his tone shifted. And he said that, he told me later that, he recognized my sincerity, that I really believed in the goodness of what I was doing. And so he started, making these arguments. He started asking me questions about Westboro's, our picket signs, and I started asking him questions about Jewish theology, not because I wanted to know what they believed, just because I wanted to know. I wanted to know so that I could make better arguments against them. And so this is kind of how this starts. I'm quoting, Bible verses from the New Testament, and David says, I'm a good Jewish boy, I don't believe in the New Testament. So I start quoting Bible verses from the Old Testament, and he says, he's like, I understand why you would think that, but if you spoke Hebrew, you'd know that's not what those verses mean. And so then I bought Rosetta Stone and started learning Hebrew, and looking up Bible, seminars on biblical Hebrew online, and so it was just this whole, and in the middle of these theological discussions, there's also this banter. We're joking about things that are happening in our daily lives, and it's not like we're talking every single day. But again, like, this is one of those, David was the one who he found that very first internal contradiction in Westboro's ideology. And it was about a picket sign calling for the death penalty for gays. And, he argued against that sign from a couple of different perspectives, including, Jesus saying, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And, I had basically seen that as a general call to humility. When people would say that to us, before this conversation with David, we would say, we're not casting stones, we're preaching words. And he said, the very obvious, well, you're advocating that the government cast stones. And that kind of, took me aback a little bit. And then he said, and also there's this member of your church who had a child out of wedlock. Isn't that another sin that deserves the death penalty? And, again, pointing out that if this woman, my mother, had been killed when she sinned, she wouldn't have had the opportunity to repent and be forgiven. So it was just one of those, I will never forget that moment, because I just felt completely destabilized. Like, it was the first time in my life that I had a question that Westboro's ideology could not answer. There was always an answer from the Bible to justify everything that we did. And so for him to have spent that time, because at that point, by the time he makes this argument, we had been talking for over a year. So the fact that he took the time and was willing to engage me for that long, to have the patience and the compassion to reach out to me, that was hugely pivotal in again, the unraveling of Westboro's ideology. This very closed system that had completely controlled my life right up until that moment.
And it sort of goes along with something that he talked about where, he said his initial response is to be confrontational.
Yeah.
But he slowly learned that, relating to hateful people on a human level is the best way to deal with them.
Absolutely. And so this is one of those, it's one of the things that I've been talking about a lot since I left, which is that it's very understandable it's those responses that we experienced on the picket line, that extremely negative, hostile, you're just reflecting back what we were putting out, you know. And so it's understandable and it's very human, but it's not effective at changing hearts and minds. You know, a friend who's an anthropologist, I was talking to her last year, and she defined shame as the idea, it's the feeling that we get when we know that we have violated the norms of our community. So when we engage people across these deep ideological divides, a lot of times attempts to shame them just reinforce their beliefs. They already believe that you're evil, so the fact that you think they're bad, they're proud of that. We at Westboro, we were proud of that. My gramps would say, you know, my gramps, the pastor of our church, would say that, you know, we wear that as a badge of honor. And so that's the sense that you get when you're engaging across these divides. But it's like David said, engaging on a human level, recognizing that this is a human being with a lifetime of experiences that has led them to these positions. And so if we want the instinct to isolate them and to be hostile to them and to hope that that works at changing their mind, again, it's human, but it isn't effective. And so, you know, if we want to change hearts and minds, if we want people to leave these groups, to not be, you know, to continue creating more victims, more targets, right? We have to be willing to reach out. And I'm always careful to say now that I'm not saying that it is incumbent upon every person, every single time you encounter someone, to try to reach out. There's obviously we have a limited amount of bandwidth, we have a limited amount of emotional energy and time and other resources. But what I'm arguing for is that the more of us who are willing and able to reach out and to disagree without demonizing, the more likely we are to change hearts and minds and to heal these deep divisions that characterize political and social and cultural discourse in this country right now.
So you look through Facebook, you look at Twitter, and it seems like right now it just brings out the worst in a lot of people.
Yeah, and again, I think it's almost like we have this self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, we see Twitter as a cesspool, as toxic place, and then we go there and we engage in toxic behaviors, and and so I always say, like, I think Twitter is a cesspool because we're making it a cesspool. You know, I think we get to decide how we're going to engage, and we can choose to just say, oh, well, this is just how it is, and just go along with it, or we can say, you know what, I'm going to take a step back and not give in to the very instinctive responses to the negative things that we see online. That we can choose to be intentional about how we will respond. To take, one of the amazing things about social media is that you don't have to respond immediately. We feel compelled to respond immediately, right? But we don't actually have to. We can actually, again, take a step back, take advantage of the buffer of time and space we have between us and the person that we're arguing with, and choose to be intentional, choose our words wisely, and actually take into consideration the perspective of the person we're dealing with, and to try to see them as a human. So I feel like some of what I'm talking about, I'm trying to empower people to take control of their conversations. We don't have to give in to those instinctive responses. We can choose to engage in better ways.
When you first signed up on Twitter, you first went quote viral for the first time on the Kate State tweet. What were some of the hateful things you heard back?
I mean, early on, actually, I think the first thing that I remember going viral was a hashtag that said "God hates hate," and it was a result of we were actually protesting here in Kansas City at the Sprint Center. Adam Lambert, I think it was an Adam Lambert or American Idol concert, something like that. And I was quite new to Twitter at that point, and I actually didn't quite understand how it all worked. And so when I found the @mentions and started scrolling through them, it was everything that I'd heard, thousands of times before. People, things like rape threats, death threats, all kinds of and I expected it. It was something that very rarely did any of that stuff move me. It was all so common that, by that point, it didn't mean a lot to me. I was in my early 20s at this point, so I'd been protesting for over 15 years. So it's really funny when I look back, when I talk about how great Twitter was for me, it wasn't that every interaction there was rainbows and sunshine. There was a lot of hate, and a lot of threats and a lot of hostility. But just the fact that there was this small group of people, these individuals who were willing to reach out, to have real conversations with me, again, that changed the course of my life. It doesn't, I think people look at, the fact that it took, for me, I was on Twitter for a couple of years before it finally occurred to me that I might have to leave Westboro. And so people look at that and they think, who has time? Who has time to spend a couple of years trying to de-radicalize people? But I don't think we should think of it in terms of like one person. This is not one person's responsibility. Like we look at the size of the task and we get discouraged. But we can just see, ourselves as, we can contribute positive experience, sow seeds of doubt for people in groups like this. And it doesn't have to take over your whole life or your whole timeline. Like you can, any positive influence that you can have, like who has any idea how it's gonna land on someone's heart?
Now that you have left the Westboro Baptist Church, how do people interact with you now?
Mostly positively. It was one of the things that was actually really disconcerting at first, how kind people were. I mean, it was wonderful. It was not something that I ever thought was possible. I didn't think, when I first left Westboro, I didn't think there was any chance that people were going to be willing to forgive me, to allow me another opportunity, to move on and to live a better life. But it was also really disconcerting because, I had been raised to believe that, it says, woe unto you when men shall speak well of you, for so did their fathers to the false prophets. Like we really did wear the hostility of outsiders as a badge of honor. And so, so it was this kind of very strange, surreal, way that people responded. The fact that even Gawker, said like, good for them, like it was unreal. It was really amazing. But, I also think, again, so the response has been largely extremely positive. There are occasionally people who can't do that, who cannot, they can only see me for who I was. And I understand that too, because I understand that, the funeral protesting, for instance, there's nothing I can do to give those families back, their last moments with their loved ones, and so it's not something that I blame anyone for. And all I can do is just be very grateful for the unreal amount of grace that I've experienced from the vast majority of people since I left.
When you did leave the church, how was that with your family?
I mean, it's devastating. For me, the time leading up to leaving, where I'm having all these doubts, they're mounting, and I'm kind of going back and forth between thinking, I know these things, at least some of these things that we're doing aren't right, to then thinking, oh my God, what if Satan is whispering in my ear and this is a test from God and I'm failing? And then the whole time, all these things are happening in my mind, and I'm, right there in the midst of the rest of the church, these people that I have loved and stood shoulder to shoulder with, in the face of the hatred of the entire world, it seemed. And and the vast majority of the church is my extended family. So there was just trying, even considering leaving. That part of the book was extremely difficult to write. It's still difficult to read or to think about. But once I actually did leave, I was surprised by the amount of relief that I felt at how, to not be constantly told this is the right way to respond to these things. You can't trust yourself. You have to go along with all of these things that we believe. And the group dynamics where there was this constant insinuation, attribution of bad intent to anything and everything. It just, I feel like I'm getting a little off track here, but even though it was extremely painful and difficult, I did it because it felt necessary, because I knew that I could not keep doing what we were doing to other people. And the relief of being able to follow my conscience was, again, it was unreal.
And I saw that you dedicated this book to your mom.
Yeah, both my parents.
Both your parents.
Yeah.
I apologize, I haven't gotten all the way through yet.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Have you talked to her since you left?
I reach out to my family regularly. You know, my mom's birthday is tomorrow. I was in Topeka a couple days ago, and I left a birthday card in the door. And I do this regularly. I send things in the mail. I send them tweets. Early on, I tried to call on the phone a couple times. So I reach out all the time, but it is a one-sided relationship because they believe that they can't have anything to do with ex-members. Sorry. They believe they can't have anything to do with ex-members because they don't want to be enabling our sins as they see it. They see it as their duty to God to, you know, the Bible verse they quote is that they're supposed to deliver us to Satan for the destruction of the flesh. So they're doing it for our good. And it's obviously one of the most devastating parts of this whole thing because they were the people who raised me, who invested so much time and energy and love in me. And, you know, but I continue to reach out for a couple of reasons. You know, one is that I hope that by finding ways to make arguments against their beliefs that they can recognize as valid, that if I can help them moderate that message in any way, that they will be creating fewer victims of, you know, people outside the people they target. And I also hope, very selfishly, I hope to have them back one day. I hope that they can be convinced by the gentle persuasion and compassion of outsiders, including me, the same way that I was.
When people read this book, what do you want them to take away from it?
I want them to take hope away. You know, the epigraph of the book is this line from The Great Gatsby that says, "Reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope." And to me, that is, you know, the willingness to look at other people and to be able to see them as being on a journey, you know, that there is hope for them to grow and change and be better, even when they're doing extremely destructive things. That, again, the instinct to isolate ourselves from them and to shame them is strong and understandable, but that if we really want things to change, we have to be willing to have those conversations and to contribute something, you know, meaningful to their lives. And so I hope they take away hope and just hopefully a belief in the power of human connection. That, I mean, it's something that I still can't believe. You know, I live in South Dakota now. I married one of my Twitter trolls. We have a daughter who just turned 1. And it baffles me still that I'm not standing on a picket line in Topeka, Kansas, you know, still living that same life. And because everything in my life was pushing me to be living that life for the rest of my life, for the rest of my days. And so the fact that I was changed by the kindness of outsiders is something that I will never forget. I will never take it for granted. And yeah, I mean, I hope so. Hope and inspiration, and maybe even a belief in the goodness of humanity.
What do you tell your daughter about your childhood and the way you grew up?
So my daughter's only 1 now, but I will tell her everything, you know, as age appropriate as you know, as it will be. But she's gonna understand, you know, why she doesn't know my family, the way that I was raised, and why I'm going to be raising her differently. You know, I think it's important. You know, it's understandable. You know, I have siblings, you know, with children, who, you know, in some ways have tried to shield them from our upbringing, from knowing about our upbringing, and I understand that impulse too. But I think it's important to talk about these things so that they don't fall into similar traps.
If anyone from your family does watch this story tonight, what would you want to
just that, first, I love you. I know where you're coming from. I remember exactly what all of that, why you believe the way that you do. But just that there is so much more out there than you understand. And, it's just, it's really hard. It's really funny that you asked this question, because for a long time after I left the church, I was unable to frame any words at all to my family because I knew that they wouldn't hear me. And then I remembered, I never wanted to hear people. I never wanted to listen to their arguments. That's not why I was on Twitter. I was there to talk, not to listen. And so even in spite of all of the barriers and the walls that they put up to keep me out, I know that they hear these words and that they can be reached. I guess that doesn't quite answer your question. What would I say to them? I guess I've said so many things in the book. There's so many more. I need to think about this. This is the most inarticulate I've felt. I feel like this whole. It's a good thing this is the last day of the tour.
Thank you. And is there anything else that you want to add?
I'm still thinking about your last question. What would I say to them? Can I redo that one?
Yes.
Okay, just that. I'm just trying to think what exactly I would say, just so I can say it once cleanly. Oh gosh, I just can't. This is why I do almost all my communication to them in writing.
Looking back, do you have any regrets?
Oh my gosh. Mostly, what I regret is the pain that we inflicted on so many people, especially the funeral protests are the hardest thing for me. But, when I think about the grace that I feel for my family, because I know why they're doing what they're doing. This is why, I think you find in the book, like I write about them with a lot of love and tenderness, and that's in spite of, it's not that I don't recognize the ways in which I was harmed by things that they did. It's that I know they were doing the best that they could. Most of them, the vast majority of them grew up in it. So I guess what I'm saying is that my regret is I try to use it as a motivator to keep working to dismantle that ideology, rather than something that causes me to become paralyzed and to not do anything at all.